There was one time, it was the day after my 15th birthday. I'll never forget this. We were out back and I wasn't hammering the nails right. He goes, "You are so worthless. You're never going to amount to shit. You're so worthless." So I got mad and I threw the hammer down and I walked inside to my room. I walk through the back door. I come inside to my room and I'm there for maybe 5 minutes and I hear Tracy walk in. He walks in, he grabs me by my hair and he punches me in my face and I fall to the ground. Then he starts like kicking me with his boots, kicking me as hard as he could. "Get up and fight me. Come on, is that all you got? Get up." And I stood up and I look at him. He knocked me down. This probably went on for like literally like 5-10 minutes. He leaves and I'm laying there bloodied, beat up. And I remember, man, I'm 15, dude, and I'm laying there and I got nobody, man. And these are supposed to be people that love you and cherish you and take care of you, but they didn't care about me, dude. They cared about them, you know? I still struggle saying that they were abusive to me because they were the only ones who were there for me. Is that weird?
So I have known Jason for a while, for years, really, but he and I have only been working together for a couple years. And in that time, I've learned that there is a lot of stuff that I just didn't know about him. I did know that he's very unconventional in the way that he approaches life and the way that he approaches his business. And most importantly, the way that he treats other people. He's one of the most generous people that I've ever met in my life. So it was a little bit surprising, to say the least, to hear a little bit more about where he came from, because often the way that people treat other people is a reflection of the way that they were brought up. And with Jason, that just isn't the case. And he felt like it was important to share a little bit of where he came from with people who might be experiencing some of the same things that he went through, or might be struggling in the same way that he did. So that's what we're going to do today. Jason is somebody that I respect a great deal and somebody that I am honored to call my friend. And I think you might too. So here's Jason Phipps. What's up, dude?
What's going on?
I have noticed that there's a lot of stuff, despite how much time I've spent with you over the last couple of years. I don't know a whole lot about you.
Fair.
So I wanted to figure out if you're interesting or not.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, let's do that.
But you had some stuff you kind of wanted to get out there.
I did.
Where you want to start?
I kind of just want to talk about what childhood was like for me.
So from birth.
From birth. I want to talk about birth, my family background. I want people to really get to know Jason a little.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the goal here.
Yeah, that's what I want too. So where were you born?
I was born here.
Here?
Is in Kennewick General Hospital,
Okay.
1984, April 2nd.
Did they call it Ken Jen?
You know, I don't know. And it was approximately at 2:42 p.m. I believe it was in the afternoon.
You could have said anything, I wouldn't have known.
I'm an Aries.
Yeah. And me too.
I like long walks on the beach.
Okay.
No, so my family is originally from Texas. My mom, I believe, is Houston area. So I will kind of start with my mom's parents. Okay. My mom had 4 brothers. Let me rephrase that. My mom had 3 brothers, Ricky, Danny, Jerry, and it was my mom, and they lived with my grandma. So that was their mom. And then they met my grandfather, who had 1 son named Tracy. Now we have a family of 5, which is my mom was the youngest. And then it goes in order of Ricky, and I believe it goes Danny, and then Jerry and Tracy in that order of age. So it was a family of 5. My mom ended up having me when she was 16. She met my dad when she was 15. Ended up moving out, getting involved in drugs. From what I was explained, it's just a lot of weed and alcohol and partying. But my dad was 20. And so my mom was 15. My dad was 20 at the time. You going to say something
in
here?
The 80s.
Yeah, 84.
I don't know what the laws were then, but I know what the laws are now.
Yeah. Yeah. So my mom still calls him a pedophile loser, if that helps.
Ooh,
but,
okay.
Okay. So my mom ended up getting pregnant with me, and she had me when she was 16. I would say for the first 4 years of my life, my mom tried to raise me, but she was into partying, into other things. My father has never been in the picture.
Well, she was a child.
She was a child. And she was in love with a guy, and, wasn't, I'm sure she tried her best. But at age 4, my grandparents adopted me, which was my mom's mom and my mom's stepdad.
Okay.
So my mom was, during this time, she was still partying a lot. She wasn't with my dad anymore, but she was still off doing her thing. So she wasn't really in a position to take care of me. She's only 20 at this time, so they adopt me. Then it's just me and my grandma and grandpa until I was 6. And then my grandma died. My mom, during that time, was not in the picture at all. I never saw her. She basically, if she came, it was like once or twice a year. So my mom wasn't involved. And it was just me and my grandparents. But a lot of people in the family, especially my grandma's kids, didn't like my grandfather because when he was growing up, he was an alcoholic and he abused them physically. So they had a lot of anger. But even though I was living with them, there was no anger for me because he was good to me. But by that time, he was older and settled down. Anyways, fast forward, grandma dies when I was 6. Then it was just, and this is where I would say that transition from 6 to 12 was where life really started getting difficult for me. It was just me and my grandfather. I'll say life with my grandfather wasn't horrible. I always had a roof over my head. I always had food to eat. But he was an alcoholic. So, and what I mean by that, he wasn't your traditional alcoholic. He was the type of man who would drink when like a holiday comes up. So let's say my grandma's birthday came along and she passed away. He would pick up one beer, and that one beer would turn into 3 weeks of straight drinking, no food, until he had to be taken to detox.
No food.
Like he wouldn't eat. Imagine a man who won't eat. He won't drink water. He won't leave the couch. He drinks bottles and bottles of wine. You walk into a room and imagine like a 3x5 foot table covered in alcohol bottles, wine bottles, half-gallon bottles, all around the floor covered in alcohol bottles. And that's what my life was like, man. You know?
What were you doing while he was doing that? What are you doing?
Raising myself. Yeah, raising myself. People tried to help, and we'll get into that. But during that period, it was just a matter of Jason doing my laundry and going to school and playing with my friends. And I was also a pretty naughty kid. Like I was hanging out with the wrong crowd, and I was a lost child. It was just me and my grandfather. And I would say during this period also is where my addiction to food and my issues with my weight came into play.
You said, I want to get right into that, but you said that he would be that he would go on these binges periodically and then would stop, and it would be triggered by something like a holiday. Now, what was it that would get him to stop?
He gets so drunk that he was going to die, and we basically took him to detox centers.
So he was forced to.
He was basically, in a sense, I would say that he went willingly when he knew it was his time because I was still around, and he did love me, and he was trying his best. But yeah, it was pretty much to the point where it's either, hey, you're going to die if you don't go get detoxed.
Okay.
So he would end up at these detox centers for 3 or 4 days. And then once he got done with that, he'd usually come home, and then they would allow me to go back to him. And I would live I remember one time I ran across the street and I stayed with the neighbors for a couple weeks. I would live with my aunt and uncle. Mostly that's where I would stay. During this period of my life, when most kids are just enjoying their life, right? I just wanted a family. And I remember one time, it was one of my grandfather's drinking episodes. I went to stay with my aunt and uncle, and he ended up getting really upset and wanted me to come home. So she drove me home, and I don't remember this. So if I said I remember, I apologize. It was explained to me later on. I don't remember the story, but I was told that we're driving back, and my aunt's driving me back, and supposedly I was just very casually, I wasn't upset, and I just looked at her and I said, well, or at least I was able to feel what it was like to have a real family for a little bit. And then she said she dropped me off, and she realized right then and there she just couldn't do it anymore.
Right. So
they kind of separated themselves. My mom was still doing her thing. She wasn't in the best place. So really, man, I didn't have anybody except my grandfather.
What was it that led to a food addiction?
Yeah. So obviously, we all know. I've struggled with my weight as long as anybody who's known me today knows me. My grandfather, he never cooked. He was in his 60s. And my life was, starting in first grade, he would deliver me lunch every single day. But my lunch would be a cheeseburger, fries, and a Reese's cup from a restaurant, not like a fast food place, but I was literally getting delivered a cheeseburger every single day when I was in first grade. And that's what I ate for lunch. And then every night we would go to a restaurant and we'd have dinner. And typically we go to restaurants that have like poker tables because he was a card player. So I spent a lot of nights in restaurants while he was playing cards, and I would just sit at the restaurant and like do my homework or sit there essentially. But yeah, so that's really where the food, like, I wouldn't say that's where the emotional attachment came in, but that's where the unhealthy relationship with, oh, it's normal to eat a cheeseburger every day, that really came in during that period. Definitely.
When you think about something like those meals or that time spent with him, is that where the emotional attachment comes from? Like, do you get comfort from thinking about that?
No, I would say when you have nobody, literally nobody, you turn to multiple things.
Right.
Some people turn to drugs. Some people turn to music.
Yeah.
Some people turn to abuse. Some people turn to porn. Some people turn to all these other evil things, or just a way to escape. I wouldn't even call them evil, but just a way to escape. Well, it's always been food for me. You know, for me, man, it's always been, what's the one thing that's never let me down? I know that if I'm going to take a bite of the cheeseburger, it's going to taste good tomorrow. It's going to taste good 30 years from now. It's never going to let me down.
Yeah.
And I would say that unhealthy relationship with an item, with a thing that you ingest into your body, has been a lifelong struggle. And definitely it just started from the normalcy of you can eat whatever you want whenever you want.
Okay.
You know, I was not being taught how to eat healthy food.
Right.
Right. And nobody liked my grandfather, all my uncles. So there was a lot of turmoil there too. I don't want to say nobody, but there's a few of my uncles who didn't, one of my uncles who really did, but it was, typical family drama.
You said that he had abused them physically?
He did. I from what I've heard, it was physically. Yeah.
What about you?
He never physically abused me unless just getting my ass whipped with like a switch or, like an old school spanking. He never physically assaulted me like that. I was physically assaulted, but later on in life. Right. So me and my grandfather find out when I'm 12 that he has cancer. Okay.
Yeah.
So we were in Walla Walla at the VA hospital, and he walks out to me and he tells me I have a spot on my lung. They gave me 6 months to live. Fast forward 2 months maybe go by. I used to sleep in this room, and it was probably like a 10 by 20 room, and I had 2 twin beds in it, and I would sleep in one and my grandfather would sleep in the other. Well, my grandfather was sleeping. My aunt, my great aunt, so it was my grandfather's sister, was staying with us. And I was sleeping also in the twin. And I heard him making a noise. So I woke up. I went over to my grandfather, and he was dying. I mean, now I know. But at the time, I was just scared. I was 12. So I just started slapping him because his eyes were rolling in the back of his head. So I was just, Grandpa, wake up, slap, slap, slap. And I kept him alive as best I could. And then I'm yelling for my aunt, great aunt. She's like 70 at the time. But she comes in. She's doing the best she can. Here I am. Finally, the ambulance comes. They take him away. And my aunt and uncle, which was Tracy, who was my grandfather's real son, his wife, LaDonna, and their son, Christopher, came because that's who was going to take care of me once he passed away. And they forced me to go to school that day. I say that because I'm 12. The only person who's ever been in my life, literally, that's like been a major support in my life every single day, is dying, and they're making me go to school. I get school's important. Don't get me wrong. Right. But wow. And I think if that was like, was
that to get you out of the way?
Yeah, that's exactly.
They didn't have to deal with it.
They don't have to deal with me.
Right. Good start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now he's at the hospital. I go to school. I get out of school. They make me go home. They do not let me go to the hospital to see him. And then it's like 6:30 at night. He's been on life support all day.
They don't let you go see him.
They weren't going to let me go see him until I don't know why. They just weren't letting me go to the hospital. I wanted to go see my grandfather, and I was being told no.
Sure.
So, well, he was on life support. I was 12. He's on life support. A lot of tubes.
I guess. I mean, you could say maybe they don't want you to see that, but
maybe
that doesn't really seem like the picture you're painting.
No, these people were. We'll get into them.
Yeah.
So that night rolls around. They finally let me go see him. Mm-hmm. Well, they didn't let me go. They let me go to the hospital, and I remember waiting in the waiting room. And it's crazy because it's been 26 years since then, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. And I'm up in the waiting room, and he's in the ICU, and the doctor comes out and is talking to my Uncle Tracy. I really don't even know what's going on. They made the decision to pull the plug. So they pull the cord. Tracy goes in and says his goodbye. Everyone says their goodbyes. I haven't went in yet. They're not letting me go in. Finally, the doctor's like, hey, he's going to die. You might want to let his son go in and say goodbye to him. And I want to paint a picture here. I think the best way to paint a picture is it helps you heal, helps people understand. I'm 12. The only man I've ever known, the only father figure, the only real mother, the only human that I've really known that raised me, who's taught me anything, even though he was an alcoholic and he did these things, he was still the only person in my life. And I went in there and I saw these tubes down his throat. And you see this frail old man, and he used to fight in Korea, and he was a construction worker, and he was just like had 5 wives, and he's like just a man. And I'm not saying having multiple wives is a manly man, but he was just like your typical raw. And then you see this guy, and he's just everything you thought highly of, and he's just a puddle of himself, And I just went in and I was like, I told him I loved him. I said, I'm going to be a good man. I'm going to be a good father. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to do well. And I just made all these promises to him. But I would say the one promise that I made and I decided to keep, and I regret to this day, was that I was going to stay with Tracy and LaDonna, and I wasn't going to leave. So I leave the room after I said my goodbyes, and he passes away. So that would have been in November. I was 12 years old. So it was like right around.
He passed away right after?
He passed away literally 5 minutes after I left the room.
Wow.
He waited 30 to 45 minutes off of life support. I went and said goodbye. 5 minutes later, he died.
Wow.
Coincidence maybe, waited for me maybe, who knows, looking back. So I would say you've heard this, and that is where my life was easy. I would say the real hardship took a turn at age 12.
You go to live with the aunt and uncle.
Well, yeah, they come to live with me though.
Okay.
So I stayed in my grandfather's house, and they lived in a manufactured home, but they left that manufactured home to move in to my grandfather's house to raise me, and they brought their son. So it was Tracy, LaDonna, Christopher, their son, who was 4 at the time, and I was 12. There's a period right after my grandpa died where I can look back now and realize that's where my emotional attachment came with food. And I'll tell you the story. So my grandfather died right around Thanksgiving. So naturally we did the funeral Thanksgiving. Everyone comes over to the house. And I remember, those big bags of rolls, like Fran's rolls you can buy from like Costco?
Yeah.
Well, it isn't like this is a bad meal, but it was just the way it happened. I'm sitting at a table. I'm by myself. I got a bag of rolls. I got a full turkey, like pretty much a plate of turkey, and I got an extra large bag of potato Lay's chips.
Okay.
Knowing me, I probably got some mustard on the side. Yeah, I like mustard.
Okay.
So then I was just sitting there and I was putting it together and I was eating. But as I was eating, I was crying. And I can remember crying and crying and crying and crying and just eating and eating and eating and eating. And looking back now, in the moment, I didn't think anything of it. I was just unhappy and food made me feel better. But looking back now, I would say that was like the first sign that obviously I have a very unhealthy situation going on here with food. And it made me feel better, man. It was like, and I heard another story where one time I was eating a Subway sandwich, and this is from my real mom. She supposedly walked in on me and she saw me crying, and she knew right then and there that like that was like my way to escape. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I haven't cried and ate food in many years, but that doesn't mean that it's still not unhealthy habits that are like ingrained in me.
Sure.
But yeah, so that's just
A sandwich does sound delicious.
Doesn't it though?
Yeah, I think that's the best sandwich in the world is the leftover Thanksgiving turkey sandwich.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's the best.
But when you have 45 of them and you're 12,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I had 45 of them, but I had a lot. So let's talk about post Grandpa dying, Tracy and LaDonna.
Yeah, where'd you go?
So they moved in with me. I was in 7th grade at the time. I'm going to keep that very surface level to a degree. There's a lot of things that happened with them that were not good. I'm going to give you a few stories. I'm going to leave quite a few out because we'll be here all day if I give you all the stories. But they are very, 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 very emotionally, physically, just very abusive to me. And you know what's weird? I still struggle admitting that. I still struggle saying that they were abusive to me because they were the only ones who were there for me. Is that weird?
I think that kind of happens. Like you don't. It's hard to admit that. I don't know. I mean, that you allowed it to happen to you, or it's hard to admit that. That's embarrassing for some people to admit that something is happening to them. I think it's a piece for a lot of people a lot of people that struggle to get help in a situation like that. But
I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
I talk about Tracy and LaDonna is I love them. I'm gonna tell you right now that I still have love for them. Were they the most evil people in my life? Absolutely. Were they there for me when nobody else was? Absolutely. And for that, I love them. And I can't explain that weird, twisted kind of love, but I can understand like how the abuser loves how the victim loves the abuser. I get that. All right, so a few examples. Let's talk about life with them. A few examples would be they would make me go out. We had a yard we lived in a little tiny house in East Kennewick, but it was full of those old mature trees. And they would do little things like, hey, you need to rake the leaves. And I'd go out there and start raking at like 6 a.m. And they would sit out there all day, drink beverages, and laugh and make fun of me and call me literal names like, come on, you piece of shit. That's all you got. You better rake harder. Come on, Jason. If you don't do it, I'm going to make you pick out a switch and I'm going to whoop your ass. Jason, you've only been out here 5 hours. You can do better than that, you piece of shit. And like, I'd be working my ass off, dude. I was a slave. And it's where it brought, I'm going to cry a little, but like, it's where it made my heart, I have really good work ethic. Not out of being taught the right way. That was my everyday, dude. Like that was literally my everyday with those people. I remember one time I didn't clean a sink good enough, a sink. And she used to say, hey, we had a dishwasher, but I wasn't allowed to use it because dishwashers are lazy. That was the motto in our household. Dishwashers are lazy, but you're not, Jason. So I used to do all the dishes, and I remember I was doing the dishes, and then I was like, after the dishes, part of the dishes, obviously cleaning the kitchen. Okay, and that's the rule. If you do the dishes, you clean the whole kitchen. It's all together. And I'm still kind of that way too, to a degree. But so I'm cleaning the dishes and I put everything away, and that probably takes like 30 minutes. She comes in and she's like, "There's some spots here. I want this all deep cleaned." I'm like, "Okay." I say 6 hours. I'm pretty close. It was 5 or 6 hours. She let me stop for dinner in between there. I cleaned the sink for 6 hours and it still wasn't good enough, man. And she hit me so hard. She hit me so hard that I had a watch imprint on my face where you could see the dial tones. And that's a true story. And then she wouldn't let me go to school the next day because she didn't want the school to see the watch dial tones on my face. I mean, that's that in a nutshell. I mean, I'll tell you.
Would they use the dishwasher?
Sure.
Yeah, they would.
Sure.
Okay, so that's emotional manipulation, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
There was one time, it was the day after my 15th birthday. I'll never forget this. We were out back and describe Tracy. He's a truck driver, speed user, typical, I hate saying typical, but just one of those guys.
Yeah, he's that guy.
He's that guy. I wasn't hammering the nails right. So when you hammer a nail, you need to hit it in 2 hits. If you don't hit it in 2 hits, you're a pussy. And I remember I was being called a pussy. Hey, pussy, is that all you got, pussy? Come on. You can do better than that. Come on, is that all you got? Let's go. He goes, you are so worthless. You're never going to amount to shit. You're so worthless. So I got mad. And I threw the hammer down and I walked inside to my room. 10 minutes go by and I wanted to build the picture. So I'm with him out back. His wife, LaDonna, is visiting her brother and her brother's sister and her brother's girlfriend. They're in the living room. I get upset. I walk through the back door. I come inside of my room and I'm there for maybe 5 minutes and I hear Tracy walk in. He walks in, he grabs me by my hair, he stands me up and he says, "Get up and fight me like a man, pussy." And he punches me in my face and I fall to the ground. Then he starts like kicking me with his boots, kicking me as hard as he could. "Get up and fight me. Come on, is that all you got? Get up." And I stood up and I look at him. He knocked my ass down. This probably went on for like literally like 5-10 minutes of me getting my ass whooped. And then I remember that my mom's brother's girlfriend at the time was like, heard this going on, but didn't see it because the door was shut. And she's like freaking out saying, "What's going on in there? I'm going to call the cops." Like she didn't even know what was going on. And my aunt's like, "Oh, it's fine. This is normal." My uncle, anyways, long story short, he leaves and I'm laying there bloodied, beat up. She walks in 20 minutes later and says, "Should have hammered the nail right, you little piece of shit," and slammed the door. And I remember, man, I'm 15, dude, and I'm laying there and I got nobody, man. And you want to talk about a strength, dude? Like, I don't want to brag about myself, but overcoming that kind of stuff, and you still hurt from it, but you think about that, and these are supposed to be people that love you and cherish you and take care of you, but they didn't care about me, dude. They cared about the money they inherited from my grandfather, which is another story for another time. They cared about them, you know? I would say that my uncle's biggest issue is my grandfather was his real dad, and I was just a stepchild son, and he really resented that. So he took a lot of that out on me. I'll give one more story, and then I'll give how that all ended. One time I was 14, 15, right around the same age. I wanted to go play baseball with my friends. She's like, "You got to have your keys." I said, "Okay." I couldn't find my keys. I looked everywhere. And I was like, "Hey," I was not mean. I was like, "Hey, I can't find my keys anywhere," you know? And then I got frustrated. I was like, "Can't find my keys," like that from my bedroom. She walks in. She punches me like 2 or 3 times in the face, breaks my nose or busted. I don't know if it's broke. I can't remember. Bloodied my nose, puts me through a closet door. And I remember looking up at her and I'm all beat up. And she's a big woman too, like 300 plus pounds, tall, like 5'11", just a very, don't mess with her type of woman. And I ended up not going to play with my friends, but here's where the story is so ugly to me. 2 days go by, and I remember we're driving in her van, and she tosses me my keys, and she says, "Oh yeah, I forgot I took them out of your room." Not "I'm sorry," not anything, just "Sorry, I took them out of your room." That was my life, man, from 12 to 18. Were there some good memories mixed in there? Yeah. You know, when I started getting like 15, 16, they let me have a little more freedom because I was buying weed for my aunt, and like, you know, I was just able to do more. Plus I was a good kid. I wasn't breaking the law. I was in sports. I was working. Like, you know, they couldn't really, like, what are they going to get mad at me for? I used to go to school, get out of school, have to be to work by 3, work from 3 to 9, go to the court club till 11, and repeat every single day. So like I did everything I could to not be home towards the last few years of my life.
I want to know where they're at now.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with they're both dead.
Sorry.
Yeah, they have both passed away. Basically, the last story between me and Tracy and the reason I moved out, I got into a little fight with Christopher at the time over watering a dog, nothing super silly. He walks out, he starts verbally getting in my face, yelling at me. I tell him to get out of my face because I'm 18 at this time. In fact, I might have been 19 at this time.
I'm sorry, your uncle or your cousin is in your face?
My uncle.
Okay.
So my cousin's there. We got in a little fight over the water.
Are you around the same age?
No, he's 8 years younger than me.
8 years younger.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I would have been 12, if this would have been when I was 19, so he would have been about 11.
Sorry, how did they treat him?
Great.
Okay.
Great.
So
it's their son.
You're Cinderella.
I'm Cinderella.
Okay.
Literally.
Right.
If you take the book Cinderella, I'm literally Cinderella.
Go ahead.
Okay. So
Christopher.
Okay. That's who I call him my little brother to this day, and we're still close.
Right. That was going to be my question.
Yeah, we're still close.
Do you talk about this stuff with him? Or have you?
I try not to because it's his parents.
Right.
And he loves his parents and they're both gone.
Yeah.
So I try.
But he knows.
He knows. He was there.
Yeah.
He knows. He's not stupid. He was there. He saw me. He saw what I went through.
Well, that's better than Cinderella.
Yeah.
Because her stepsisters
didn't care.
They didn't care.
No.
All right.
No.
So
he was
good.
too young. All right. He might have been part of it if he was older.
All right. Yeah.
So get into it with Tracy. Tracy goes back inside. He starts yelling at Christopher, and it kind of brought back flashbacks because Christopher's around that age. And I was like, if you have a problem, take it out on me. And we got into a verbal altercation. He came after me. I put him through a wall. I moved out, never came back. So that's kind of that story. That was like the final icing on the cake.
Did you see him after that?
Yes. So naturally, I still came back and visited because Christopher was there. And I forgot to mention that LaDonna and Tracy split when I was 18. So let's backtrack that.
Are you bigger than him at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
So LaDonna and Tracy split up when I was 18. She moved to Oregon. He stayed, and I decided to stay for Christopher.
Wow, I thought they would be together forever.
Mm-hmm. So I stayed to help out Christopher. So I stayed for about a year until I moved out. So now we're back to where we were when I moved out.
Okay.
I was only probably moved out 8 months before he killed himself, committed suicide, and I will walk. You want to hear that story?
Yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'll tell you. It's a good one. It's a great one. It's a Friday. I'm hanging out with my friend Brad Anderson is his name. And I go to my uncle's house to say, hey, we're leaving town. I'm going to go to Puyallup, hang out with some friends. We're going to go to the state fair. I'll be back on Sunday. He was so cool, man. I remember this day. He was like the light of the world. He was like, oh, that's so awesome. I can't wait for you to come back on Sunday. I'm having a barbecue. I'd really love for you to meet my girlfriend. And I'm like, okay, Tracy, I'll be back Sunday. I can meet your girlfriend. So I go on the trip, come home. I go to my apartment first. I check my voicemail. This is back pre-cell phone days, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were around, but they weren't as popular. They're probably like Snake, you know?
Yeah.
We were playing Snake on the Nokia.
Yeah.
I have 40 missed messages. Jason, where are you? Jason, are you okay? Jason, what's going on? Jason. I'm like, what is happening? But no one's telling me Tracy passed away. Well, come to find out, they thought that he killed me and then took himself out. And nobody knew I was out of town but him. So the whole town's looking for me.
Sure.
They're like, where's Jason?
Right.
Well, what he ended up doing was that Friday, he went to a bar called the Satellite, or the Hole in the Wall. If you're from that East Kennewick, you know this bar. And it's an old timer bar.
They go to the Hole. Did he go there a lot?
He went there a lot.
That's funny.
Yeah.
You've told 3 stories now about somebody being put through a wall, and now we're in a ball called the Hole in the Wall. It's the whole theme.
It's the whole theme. And he went there and he partied till like 2 a.m. Then he had beers or whatever. Then he drove back home, wrote a suicide note, left all his jewelry, put his ID in his back pocket, and walked to Clover Island, where he supposedly took a .22 rifle. He perched it in between some rocks. He leaned his head forward and he took a stick and he shot himself in the head and he killed himself. I still really struggle with that.
Okay.
He was hanging out with the Gypsy Jokers. He was really involved with a bad group of people. I went to his house one time where he was beat up black and blue from the head to his toe. I knew he was involved in a lot of situations. The suicide note didn't say goodbye to LaDonna or me or anybody else, which I find very hard to believe because as bad as our relationship was, he was still, like I said, in a weird way, cared about me. Yeah.
Out on Clover Island.
Yeah, on the rocks. Like when you enter Clover Island, there's those rocks down below.
Yeah.
He walked right down there and killed himself and fell face first into the water.
You think about that when you're down there?
Every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man who raised me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Killed himself here.
Sure. Where's she at?
She cleaned herself up. She was off the drugs. She was doing really good. She was living in Boardman, Oregon, working at a coal fire plant. I was 25 at the time, and I was working I just started as a 911 dispatcher. And I get a call that she has a flesh-eating bacteria, and I need to rush to Portland. I'm at the job. I'm like, what? So the story goes, she was out in the garden. She ended up getting a cut on her leg. She went inside and she's like, oh, it didn't hurt. It was a small little scratch. The next morning she woke up, her leg was black and blue. They rushed her to Hermiston because they couldn't figure out what was going on with her. They found out she had something fasciitis, and it's a flesh-eating bacteria that was moving up her leg. Well, by the time she got to Hermiston, it was too late. They couldn't amputate her leg. So they flew her to Portland, and when they flew her to Portland is when they called me, and by the time I actually got there, literally I was walking in, she was dead. So she died in less than 24 hours after making contact with this flesh-eating bacteria.
What's Chris doing now?
Well, Christopher had a really bad history of heroin, drugs, but he has been clean now for almost 2 years. He works at a lumber mill. He's doing amazing. Best that he's ever done.
Well, I mean, that's good. And like, it's normal, I think, when that is your environment growing up, right? It's normal for some of that to rub off on you, right? So you don't have those vices.
No.
Why do you think it is that you avoided those vices?
Well, I didn't. In a way, I used food.
Sure. But that's better than
it is
than meth and
sure, it's
hitting
better.
your
But
kids.
if you think about it, at the same time, it's just it's still an outlet that's unhealthy.
Alcohol didn't grab you. Was there ever a point in your life where alcohol did? Never.
And I would probably say because I grew up around an alcoholic.
Yeah.
You know, when you're around stuff, you just don't want to be around.
But it doesn't usually, not usually, but often it does go the opposite way. Often when that's such a defining part of your environment growing up, it's not often the case that people don't gravitate that way.
I'll bring it up. I have a very good group of friends that I met around the age of 12. We are still friends today. And if they wouldn't have been in my life, who knows, man?
Right.
They're good people, all of them. So they drink, but just like normal people.
Right.
They have a drink occasionally.
Well, sure. And your family's not always blood, right?
Right, exactly.
Right.
That is my family.
Right.
You know, just because, and don't get me wrong, I have other family, but like that is my family. As far as like my dad today, he's on the streets here somewhere. I have 4 brothers and sisters with 3 different women that I am the oldest of 5. The last time I talked to my father, I think I was running him on 911 dispatch. His real name is Kevin Jones, and he's the worst kind of loser.
He's here on the streets somewhere?
Yeah, I think my mom said she saw him outside of Ron's about a month ago. Yeah.
Whoa.
He lives here.
Okay.
On the streets.
Okay.
And one time I did try to reach out to him, and he told me it was my fault we didn't have a relationship. And I just realized at that point it's probably best we don't have a relationship.
Sure, yeah. I mean, obviously, in a lot of circumstances, you can kind of tell a little bit about, or maybe you assume, maybe incorrectly, that you can kind of tell a little bit about somebody's upbringing or the circumstances of their childhood by the person that they are. And it's surprising to me to hear the severity of your situation growing up, because I don't detect any of that in you at all. What led you here? Why are you?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
There was a moment, I want to share this story, and it's weird. It's a weird one. You might enjoy this one. I've
enjoyed them all so far.
Oh, good.
It's like a ton of fun.
Good. I was 20. I was downtown Kennewick. It was one of those 18 or over nights at the beach.
Okay.
Remember that?
Yeah.
I think it was the beach or the bed or whatever it was called back in the day.
Yeah.
But for a while, where the old J.C. Penney's used to be there on the corner, it was a church called The Bridge, I think was the name of it. And I was just going downtown to cause trouble and hang out with my friends, and we decided to pull into this little place. And
the way you said that was kind of, we decided to pull into this place.
It was good, right?
Where are we going?
Well, so I walk in.
Where is he?
I walk in, and the first thing I do, and this is where I felt like maybe I might have a little something. I guess why I'm sharing this is, even though I think it's hilarious thinking back on it, it was they spoke very highly of me, and it kind of gave me, and it still sits with me today. That's why I'm sharing it. So I go in and I'm just hanging out. There's kids having coffee, and then there's like people back there and they're praying for you or whatever. And they're actually kind of like talking to you. Like it's kind of like we're looking into your, like, what is God telling us about you type of like psychic type thing. And so it was a little different. But I sit down with them. These people have never met me. And they say to me, wow, you've been through a lot in your life. I was like, now think about it, anybody can say this, right? You know, but I was like, yeah. They're like, we get this opinion that you're like, and she's being really kind of weird about it, but she's like, you're like a pole, a rigid pole, and you'll bend with the wind, and you'll bend over, but you'll never break. She's like, that's what I'm seeing. She's like, I see this huge power in you. And she's like, it's almost intimidating. And I was like, oh, thanks. So I didn't think anything of it. And then I'm like done with my little reading, and I'm just like having fun with my friends. But then this girl comes up to me, and you're going to think this is funny, but it's a true story. I'm sitting there amongst a group of people, and she was beautiful. Like a 20 out of 10, beautiful girl. You know, those like blonde, Christian, come on, really cute girls. Sure, you do.
Yeah.
And she says to me, you ever seen the movie Braveheart? I said, yeah. She goes, you're like that guy.
You're like Mel Gibson.
I'm like Mel Gibson. And as corny as that is, though, in a time where I had nobody telling me anything positive,
right?
That whole situation gave me like a little bit of confidence. Because let's be real, I'm one of the most insecure people you will ever meet. I'm very secure when it comes to my career, like my knowledge of my business and like what I do to help people and like my values. But when it comes to me as a human, I'm the most insecure person you'll ever meet. Sure. And it's a lifelong battle, you know? Yeah.
We were actually just talking about this morning, right? Yeah. That you're like, you are kind of, I mean this, you will know what I mean, but you have an arrogance about your, obviously arrogant is probably the most negative word I could have chosen for
I actually agree, though.
You have kind of a benevolent arrogance, I'll say. Like you have you and another friend of ours are the two people that I know who have, I'm going to say extraordinary amount of success, because it is above average, the amount of success that you have. But you have not forgotten what it was to not have what you have, to not have yet built what you've built, right?
Right.
Somebody who has built something remarkable, but never hesitates to contribute where he can. You know, so like, yeah, I think those are kind of my favorite kind of people. It's sort of like an attractive woman who doesn't realize she's attractive, you know, like that.
I get that.
Person, I guess. Maybe I shouldn't like make it about women. Those are like some of my least favorite people are people that are great and know it. You know, I would much rather surround myself with people that are great but don't believe it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm. But I feel like I'm a good realtor in the sense that I'm very knowledgeable and I'm really good at working through problems. I think it's I like to say my autistic mind. And I don't mean that as an insult. You know, my son's autistic. I don't mean that at all. I just think that it's my focused mind sometimes. And that's what's allowed me to be. And I'm creative. I'm outside the box. And I think people know that, yes, I'm creative to get you through the door. But once you're through the door, it's nothing but professionalism. And this is not by any means an ad here. So please, I want to say that. All this is these are the few little things that have allowed my success. My crazy marketing ideas, like the cruises. And yeah. And you know, when I bought those cruises, I bought 70 cruises up front.
Explain that real quick.
Yeah. So I will say that like things that I do that are totally different is I take a risk. And amongst the community, and I will just say amongst our community, it's not necessarily looked good upon. People are like, why aren't you picking up the phone? Why aren't you door knocking? Why aren't you doing this?
There's a way that people in real estate like to operate. It's like the Instagram photo about how happy you are, and like, here I am holding keys, just in case you were confused about what I do. What I do is keys.
Exactly. So in my mind, I'm like,
no offense to anybody.
Yes, none at all. But like in my mind, I'm like, I just want to get people to know who I am.
Yeah.
And hopefully if they get to know me, then they're going to buy a house from me.
Right.
I don't care how they get to know me. I just want them to get to in a nice way,
Yeah.
obviously. So I was like, I want to do something outside the box. So I went to Jennifer and I was like, hey, we didn't have money. Like we were literally draining our savings account to do this. And I said, I want to buy 70 cruises. And I found this company, if we do it, they're around $300 a cruise. And she says, why? We've never done, now granted, we've never done 70 deals ever. The most we've ever done is like 30. We've never, like the list goes on of why we shouldn't do this. And I'm like, because I can market it. I can do so many cool things with this. Like I was just telling her all the stuff I can do. And she's like, no.
In her defense.
Yeah.
That is something an insane person says.
Well, I'm an insane person.
Right, that I'm going to buy, if I buy 70 cruises, they're cheaper.
Yeah.
How can I afford not to buy 70?
That's what I did.
Yeah.
So I bought 70 and we used almost all of those things.
Yeah.
And that was really honest. We were going from like 6 million a year. I did the cruises, 17.5 million that next year. Now, granted, the market was starting to go on the climb there too.
Yeah.
So it could have been a multitude of things, but and then I've done the gorilla videos and blah, blah, blah. I want people to understand though, like I just do that for fun to get their attention. It's not anything else. You know, I want people to like, what is this guy doing?
Who is that guy in the, I should probably put it like a little sample of it right here in the thing, but like that gorilla video, I remember when I first saw it, I was looking at it like this is bad. Like but I'm like, and I could not tell. And this is why it's hilarious. This is one of my favorite kinds of maybe my favorite form of satire is something that when you can't tell whether it's that bad on purpose or that corny on purpose, or like, did they mean this?
No.
Like,
am I a gorilla? I mean, I look kind of like a gorilla.
This dude is like popping in and out of it. He's like the guy who rapped on it.
Yeah.
He disappears and then reappears or whatever. And it's like, I remember watching that and I could not tell whether you were serious or not.
That was the whole point.
But I mean, now that I know you, I'm like, okay, that was like
hot like Tabasco and Pasco, Brian.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
know?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I'll remember that for a while. But there's like, I like to put media out. I like to create things. I like to do things that make people laugh. I don't think I would have had the balls once I saw that to put that anywhere.
oh, I did.
Yeah, totally.
Did I tell you how I got called into a certain person's office and told that it wasn't okay?
I remember it. I remember it. Yeah, like the dude at Remax did not like it.
Did not like and he said that it's going to make my career go downhill.
Yeah.
And I said, well, for every one person that hates it, 10 people are going to like it, and they're going to talk about it.
Well, talk about it is the main thing.
There we go.
Right. That's part of the thing. One of the most major things about being in any kind of sales or anything like that, two things I think, is creating something that people notice. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is something we were talking about before, where like, I think salespeople on the list of people that are mistrusted in the world. Mm-hmm. I mean, salespeople's way up there, but I think part of the reason is because there's this lack of authenticity with a lot of them. And like, I don't know if that's more prevalent. I think the example everybody uses is kind of used car salesman, but I'm wondering, like, real estate agent seems like worse.
Well, here's
like,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I think that with internet and social media and knowledge, the salesman stigma is kind of dying down.
Yeah.
Because people are more knowledgeable. I would say that they don't need to be sold anymore because they know what the hell you're going to say.
Right.
And so like if you're going to a client or anybody and you try to sell them, you're going to lose them.
Yeah.
At least I feel that way.
Well, people kind of notice. People can. There's Tom Ferry, the real estate coach, mogul, whatever I don't know what you want to call him. Mm-hmm. A successful real estate guy who's never sold a house in his life. But I don't know. If you have, sorry, Tom. But
I don't think he has.
I don't think so. I've always said that the money in real estate is not in selling houses. The money in real estate is selling things to real estate agents. because everybody's always looking for the thing they can purchase to put themselves over the top next.
That's right.
But he calls that he calls it commission breath. This idea that like you, everything about a person sort of indicates to somebody that they're here for, money. Mm-hmm. And like that's one reason I think that people in like waiters or people who worked in like coffee shops or whatever, I think are good at a business like this, is because like those are largely your income is not the main thing. But you make more money if people like you more. You make more money if people if they develop a connection with you. Correct. But you can't have the money as the main thing.
No. In fact, I teach that.
Yeah.
Sure. Money needs to be the last thing on your mind.
Yeah.
It's about what kind of value do you provide.
Right.
Because with value comes money.
Yeah.
So
what now?
So basically we're just going to keep selling houses. I do want to start training. So I'm in the process of doing some training courses. But the biggest thing is I just want to get my message out there, because I want people to know that, yeah, I'm a little awkward sometimes. Yeah, I'm a little loud sometimes. Yeah, I can think I'm all that at times. But at the end of the day, at my core, I just want everyone to win, man. Like, I mean that. Like, I don't care who they are. I don't care where they come from. If they put in hard work and they're a good person, that's all I want. And honestly, if people have the wrong idea about me, it's just because they don't know me. So I just challenge anybody who does to just talk to me, because I'm not hiding anything. I'm naturally just happy behind a computer, marketing and doing what I do, but you're going to be seeing a lot more of me out there just because. And so moving forward, it's just, and you and I creating, podcasting. Mm-hmm. That's it, man.
Yeah. I said this before, that sometimes you can definitely tell that somebody came from like a considerable amount of struggle, but it's, I mean this as a compliment, that you didn't, it's interesting to me that you didn't carry that over into the way that you treat people. There are obviously, you have your own insecurities about yourself, but you don't, I don't know, man. You've come out all right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, dude. But I would be remiss if I did not ask you about the finger.
Okay, yeah, the finger.
Hold it up. Yeah, there it is.
So, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I do.
All right. So, July 15th, I was selling a quad, and I had a guy come over, and we were here at the office because my quads were parked out front of the office. And I was showing him all the buttons. It was a 2019 850 SP Polaris. It's big quad.
Okay.
And on the bigger, newer quads, they have winches on them. 3,500 pound winch was on the front of this one. And I'm showing him the buttons. I'm like, this is how you release the winch. This is how you pull the winch up. These are blah, blah, blah. I reached down and I grabbed the hook. And the hook was almost all the way in anyways. And I said, release the winch. And he says he did. But it sucked my hand up, and before you know it, I had to rip my finger off to save my hand.
He hit the button?
Yeah.
Oh.
So then
I know you like lost the finger and everything, but that's hard for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So I pull my hand, and then I look, and I'm like, my finger's gone. And blood's like, you ever seen the movies like the blood starts squirting with every pulse?
Yeah.
That's literally what was happening. So I tell him, get me a towel. And he grabs me a towel. And then we're heading to the hospital. And he's like, where do I go? And here I am giving him directions as I don't have half my finger. And I finally say, hey, man, I can't give you any more directions. I'm going to pass out. And they get me to the ER. And you want to hear what happened to the ER?
Yeah.
Okay. So I get there, and then it hits. I'm like, oh, crap. So then I kind of start crying a little because I'm like upset crying. Not like in pain, but less upset.
Yeah.
And they get me back there, and they get me into a room, and an hour and a half, 2 hours go by, and no one's bandaging me. I'm sitting there with an open wound bleeding, and I don't know what the heck's going on. And finally someone comes in. It's a younger doctor, And he's like, the reason we're taking so long is we've just never seen a finger like this, and we don't really know what we're doing with it yet. I said, okay, well, can we numb it? Can we do something to it in the meantime? He's like, yeah. Well, my finger was so crushed, they never dealt with a crushed finger. They dealt with just like severed. So
Never dealt with a crushed finger. That's odd. Okay.
Yeah, the way it was crushed, I guess they were trying to explain to me. I don't know.
We've seen crushed fingers, but this is really crushed.
Pretty much. This one is damaged beyond repair. Yeah. So
we're just really amazed.
It really was.
I'm sorry we're not helping you, but this is an amazingly crushed finger.
For real. Yeah. So then the older doctor comes in and they're debating about who's going to operate on me. Excuse me. They're like, who's going to cut to the nub? Because they had to cut me mid-knuckle and like fold the skin over. Old doctor's like, I've done one of these when I was in Chicago. New doctor's like, I've never done any of them. All the nurses are like, can we come in and watch? So imagine, finally, the new doctor and him are having this debate, and I finally speak up and I say, hey, you haven't done one yet? To the new doctor, and he goes, nope. I said, it's your time. Let's get it going.
Okay.
So I encouraged the younger doctor to saw me. So then he's like, all right, I'll do it. So finally I talk him into doing it. And then we have, imagine 6 nurses, 2 doctors, and he's just sawing away at my fingers, blood squirting, and yeah. So that's my finger story.
That's how they run things over there? They're like, I don't know what to do with this finger. And then the patient has to be like, how about that guy?
Yeah, for
how
real.
About that? And he's like, okay.
When I left, I was like, I think I have a lawsuit here, but I would never do that.
Sure. It's a weird, I think about that. Actually, I think about it a lot. Like every time sorry, the way you're doing that. Okay. It's like a turtle or something. The way
my
that
dog tail.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Go on.
The way that I think about it whenever I'm watching like a James Bond movie or something, and somebody like just some, non-important character gets killed in it or something. Like a guy's coming down the stairs and he gets killed by whatever. I'm like, that guy's whole life led up to like that. Like everything he did, like everybody he met or whatever, led him to that staircase where he just ran into James Bond and it didn't go well.
Right?
Right? Or like a Batman movie or something like that. But when I think about that thing, I think about how weird it would be to have you had it for 37 years.
Yeah.
And then just suddenly,
boom.
in a moment.
38 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, you have something on you attached to you for 38 years. You don't even think about it ever. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think about my fingers unless I'm thinking about yours. I don't think about it. Right. But yeah, I've kind of got all mine, but that could change like at any second. But that's a really odd thing. My question is, you're trying to sell them, or one, and then all of this happens, and then he has to take it. Did he end up buying?
He did buy it.
He bought it.
Took him about a week.
Took him about a week.
But he bought it.
Did he drop you at the hospital? He's like, I'll think about it.
No, I think he just, it's kind of how it went actually, but I think he just felt really bad.
Yeah. All right, good enough.
Next time.
All right.